Hey there, Shane Thompson, Hockey and Outsider podcast with my waiver wire for week 11 in the NHL. This week I'm just going to go straight into it. If you look at the schedule on Daily Faceoff, which is the site again that I use, make sure you're setting for the proper week. Week 18 you see at the top here. I'll click it. I've taken a look already to this week at the waivers, and there's not a huge amount out there. It's not an amazing week to be adding guys. There's not a lot has jumped off the page at me. You see the teams here that have 4 games. You have Anaheim, Boston, and you got some teams with 2 games this week, and there definitely are some players on those teams I think that you do want to get rid of that were valuable last week, maybe because they had 4 games and now they're suddenly not valuable. So Calgary 2 games, Chicago 2 games, Columbus 4, a lot of 3 games here. Philadelphia 4, and there's actually a few guys on Philly I'm looking at this week. Vegas with 2, and Vegas just continue to keep playing great. So, I mean, they're a team that if you bought in on any of their players early in fantasy, they've paid off. And they've actually got, even though they have a 2-game week this week, they've got some guys that I noticed last week kind of went off and are interesting now. So now getting into the actual teams and my watch list and stuff for this week. I did notice a few players on some of those 4-game weeks that are interesting, but I didn't see a lot of long-term value this week at all. I'll start with my most shallow league because I find it's a good place to start with those guys that are owning like maybe 25% of leagues or whatever. I did see some guys this week that I thought were interesting, but I didn't have a lot to drop this week, I also noticed. Guys that I have here, Adam Henrique, I added him last week hoping for something from him, and he actually cooled right off. And I considered dropping him this week, but he's got a 4-game week in Anaheim, so I think you keep him this week. You see how it goes, and if he gets going again, then he's going to have great value this week with those 4 games. He definitely has cooled off since his hot start when he joined Anaheim, but he's still getting the usage, like a lot of high-quality minutes, and he gets those face-offs, but he's not even shooting. His last 2 games, no shots, so that's a bad sign. So he really needs to turn it around. You might even midweek want to drop him if he's still doing the same kind of stuff. But I generally, if a guy has 4 games in a week, I keep him that week and really keep an eye on him, even if he's cooled down. Matthew Perreault, I mentioned him a lot. All these guys are really similar ownership I've found this week, 23%. He's steady. He's just been steady while he's been playing. Like, he gets no minutes, but he's really an offensive specialist for them. And that's still a great thing because the power play is where a lot of the teams are scoring most of their goals anyway. So they've only got 3 games this week, so they're not a high-value target. But I always say this, he's just a guy you got to own. Somebody in your league should be owning him. Doesn't necessarily need to be you, but somebody should be owning him while he's healthy. He is absolutely a guy who will get hurt, but I believe that right now he's got value, so just keep him in your lineup. I noticed Dadonov is just back from injury. He's absolutely a guy to keep an eye on. 24% here. He was playing really well before getting hurt. And absolutely is a guy with high upside. He's a Panarin style of talent. So there's no guaranteeing he's ever going to pan out in the NHL as good as he was in Russia. But he has that skill level that you never know, and he could wind up being a 60-point player or even higher down the line. I would doubt it this year, but keep an eye on him this week. He 24% owned. I think that's under-owned for sure with his scoring ability. So keep an eye on him, and I think I think he's going to be owned much more than that by the end of the year. I think he's a safe 45-point player. So just keep an eye. He was dropped by a lot of people when he got hurt, and I think he's going to have value. Eric Holla was a guy I looked at. Again, all these guys, 25% owned, very similar. Holla has just been steady all year, like really steady all year long. They only have 2 games this week, so he might not be a great ad for this week, but I think you can kind of expect 45 points at least from Holla, maybe even closer to 50 at this pace. He's scoring a lot of goals. He's always had a nose for the net. He is not getting much power play time recently, but that doesn't mean that he won't get it back. And he gets a little bit of everything too. If you have a multi-category league, he gets his shots, which is always one of the main things I look at, guys who shoot a lot. But he also wins faceoffs. He gets some hits, and he even gets blocks. He has 3 blocks in 2 games ago and 2 the game before, and that's not common for a forward. He's kind of a just do-it-all forward who's got a great opportunity in Vegas to finally play expanded role. And he's played really well. And he is not a guy who can't score either. So if goals are more valued in your league, he's got some value. I don't think I would add him this week, but I think he's, at this point, pretty legit. I think you kind of have to just buy in to what he's doing. A goalie that if he wasn't added in your league when Dubnyk got hurt, he should have been. And I got lucky and I got him in 1 league. He's absolutely, Stalock is going to be the goalie for now in Minnesota. Minnesota's a great team, and I mean, ride him while he's playing. So if he somehow is not been picked up by the Dubnyk owner in your league, or if you're the Dubnyk owner and you're looking for a replacement, he's gone up 36% in the last week. He's at 37% now. He absolutely needs to be owned. I think Dubnyk is a good goalie, but I think a lot of Dubnyk's ability comes from how good Minnesota is, and they're such a defensively sound team. So any goalie that plays for Minnesota, I'm going to try to own. So absolutely, if you can get Stalock for the upcoming week, and until Dubnyk comes back, he's just a lock to be a valuable goalie, I think. His stats have been good since he's been in there. He's even got a shutout in there. So just put him in, and I would actually be starting him over a lot of other goalies right now. He's in the top probably 15 of NHL goalies while he's in there, I would say. Nick Bjugstad, this is more deep league, absolutely, but he's starting to get it going. And he was, if you were checking before the year, he was a guy that was off everybody's radar because he was so terrible last year and just didn't play. But he was really good a few years ago, and he's kind of looks like he's getting his groove back and has been really steady over the last month. Since the 28th there, you can see he's gotten a pretty consistent spray of points. I like him as a deep league ad, and look at that, 6 shots on goal his last game, so that's a great sign. You'd love to see anybody getting 6 shots on goal. That just shows that they're being aggressive, and that's positive, super positive. That's not, the game's not even over. That's only end of the second period. He's got an assist today. So I think deep leagues, I think he's worth adding. I'm not sure about more shallow leagues, but look, he's got an upside of about 50 points. He's not going to get there this year, but he absolutely is that talented of a player, I believe. Nick Schmaltz in Chicago. The Nick Schmaltz watch is on. He's finally looking like he's heating up, and he's getting solid amounts of playing time. Even if you go back to the 27th, he got a 3-point game there, and he's 17 minutes a game. I would say it looks like he's averaging about 19 or 20 minutes a game right now as a forward in Chicago. So I think he's an ad, and I think even though they only play 2 games this week, I wouldn't wait too long on him, because if he gets an expanded role, which it looks like he has gotten, Chicago's the type of team that you put a couple guys, put anybody around Kane or especially Kane. I would say Taves, but not really anymore. But Kane, anybody around Kane is going to produce. So I would say it's time to buy in a little bit on Nick Schmaltz. If you notice his minutes going down, that's something to keep an eye on. But right now, it looks like he's got a solid 15-minute to 20-minute role on that team. And he's got some scoring punch. And Chicago doesn't have much other than him to go with. So they're going to let him play, I believe. Not too many more here. A bunch of these guys are guys I talked about last week. Vrana, I mentioned over and over again. I told people don't sell out on him yet. Like everybody was dropping him, like he had no value, and now he's had a 3-point streak in their last 3 games. So he is what he is. He's going to get about 40 points, I would imagine. But I think that's not a bad thing at all in Washington. He's going to be a positive plus player. He's not amazing. Keeper value is a little bit higher maybe than some players because he is young, and if he gets an expanded role in the coming years, he could be really good for Washington. But right now, I would be happy just to have him getting his 40 points or 45 points this year. I think he's a very safe option this year. He's going to go on spans of a couple games without points, but I wouldn't expect too much of it. A guy a little bit lower down here, McNabb in Vegas. If you play in a bangers and mash league where hits are valued, I absolutely think you should be adding him. He's on pace for some nasty totals of hits and blocks. So, and he also gets solid minutes and occasional points. He's not offensively inept, and he absolutely has a big role with that team. So I would suggest if you have a bangers and mash league, he's a great ad. He's not a great ad this week. He's got to look at a week or two down the line when he's got more games. They've only got 2 games this week. But absolutely, you should be looking at him. And another defenseman from the same team that I noticed today, 24%, Colin Miller. Earlier in the year, I professed that Colin Miller is good. He just is good. He's not a fluke. His scoring surge at the beginning of the year was not luck. It was he's done it in the minors. He's probably didn't have the right role in Boston because they had other guys. But now he's got the role in Vegas, and Vegas just keep winning. And he's just solid, like really solid. Power play minutes, plays in every role, lots of shots. He hasn't slowed down, and he's getting hits. He gets blocks. He's looking right now like he's going to be a 40-point defenseman, maybe even a little bit more than that. And that 40-point defensemen don't grow on trees. So if Colin Miller somehow has slipped through the cracks and nobody's taken the risk on adding him because they don't know his name or whatever, you should have him in your league. And don't overthink it, just add him. And even I would say the 2-game week is a bit of a downer for this week. I don't know how valuable he is this week, but absolutely next week you're going to want him. And if you wait, you're probably not going to get him. So looking at my middle tier depth league, there wasn't a lot here that I noticed. There's a few guys that are starting to get it going that might be interesting. Pajot is a guy I always like in Ottawa. He's not been good this year at all. Ottawa have been horrible. He actually went on looks like about a 10-game streak there of no points. But he's one of the more defensively responsible players in the NHL. He plays solid minutes, plays a lot of short-handed time, which can be valuable. And also, it just does a little bit of everything. And I kind of believe in him as a player. I think he's better than what he's been this year. And I think he's due for a hot streak. So in a very deep league, he's worth a look. They've only got 3 games this week as well. But I kind of like Pajot to heat up a bit in the next little bit. I think he's been cold, but I think he should heat up. This is a guy that, Juuse Saros in Nashville, that he's not worth much right now at all because he's only starting every 4 games, it looks like, right now. And you got to watch for him on back-to-backs, and they have no back-to-backs this week. But I still believe in him to be definitely next year or maybe 2 years down the line to be a very, very valuable fantasy goalie. I think he's Nashville's goalie of the future. I think Rinne has held his own this year and has been pretty good. And I'm ready to. I've been ready to write the death certificate on Rinne for a while. And he keeps being, average, an average goalie on a good team, and he gets the stats, and he's got the history with Nashville, so they'll keep him until he can't play anymore. But this guy's ready. Juuse Saros is ready to step in. He just had a 46-save shutout his last game against Edmonton, and basically won that game for Nashville. Performances like that are eye-opening for the whole organization. So they know that this guy's ready. He had a very cold start of the year, and I think if not for that cold start of the year where he played horrible in a few games, he would have had an expanded role this year. So he's had to work his way back and prove himself in the minors again, and then come up and have some good performances. But he has now. He's put together 3 solid performances in a row, way above average. 43 saves 4 games ago, 46 saves this last game. Those are 2 of the better games in the NHL period this year. So I really believe that if you're in a deep keeper league or a dynasty, absolutely, dynasty value for this guy is huge. He is Nashville's starter of the future. You're going to wish you had him 2 years from now when he's a 24-year-old with a full-time job with an amazing team. So if you can buy in on him, very cheap. I'm sure he's available in 97% of these Yahoo leagues he's available. But if you're in a deep keeper, he might not be available, but he might be a guy to try to trade for and just get him as a throw-in on another trade, on a deeper trade. And you never know. You might be able to just get him thrown in there because he hasn't been that great. Okay, Brossoit has been good in Edmonton, and he was another guy I mentioned to add last week. He's heated up, although he was bad today. But I think until Talbot's back, he's worth monitoring, and I think he's even in a league where you're struggling for goalie starts and definitely looking for wins. I think he's worth definitely looking at. Edmonton's still very up and down. They're still win-loss, 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 win-loss all the time. It's very 50-50 with them. But I do like him to get a few more wins here before Talbot comes back and put up average stats. Nothing amazing, but average stats. And wins are wins, and I think Edmonton still have to turn it around. I still think they have to go on the upswing here. So I would keep an eye on him. Valtteri Filppula, the long-lost Valtteri Filppula, who 3% owned. That was really astounding to me. He's a guy who last year had 42 points. While it was with a better team, he's still 42 points is 42 points, and that's for a 3% owned. That's kind of crazy to me. He's been hot. Philly's been hot. Philly's been playing much better. Philly does this. Philly goes on. Look at their last 20 or looks like 12 games or so. They have 6 losses in a row, and then they have 6 wins in a row. So you want to buy in on Philly when they get hot, because when they get hot, they're great, which is right now. And when they are cold, sell out real quick. And Filppula is a guy who they have 4 games this week. He's getting hot. He's about a point per game in those 6 winning games that they've had. And also his role has been expanded. He's playing closer to 19, 20 minutes now. And they've been winning since that happened. So that's a good sign. He's also getting a lot of face-off wins. Not a great amount of shots, but you're not going to expect goals from Filppula anyway. He's more of a setup man anyway. So I think he's an absolute add this week with 4 games, and he's worth monitoring going forward. He could get back to that 45-point pace that he's capable of. And Philly are not a bad scoring team. They struggle defensively, but I don't think that scoring's their issue with guys like Giroux and Gosper and many other good offensive players. I also noticed in one of my leagues that Elliott went available on waivers. It's 71% owned, so he's not very available. But if anybody's dropping Elliott, that's a mistake. So grab him while they're hot, because he is one of the most hot and cold goalies as well. Philly and he combined for one of the hottest and coldest tandems in the league. So get him while he's hot and ride him. Another guy, Michael Raffle. He's doing well right now. He, just like I said, Philly's doing well. He's doing well. Great. I think he's all right to add this week. He's got a little bit of value, maybe get you a couple points in a 4-game week. But long term, he has like literally no value, I think. I think he gets no power play time. He gets limited ice time, like 14 minutes or so. And he's not really shooting the puck, and he's not getting hits and not getting blocks. So he offers very little. But he's more of a guy that I would say avoid, unless you're in a very deep league and you just want to get games. You just want to get somebody who has more games. I would pretty much avoid him. He's never been. He was touted a little bit earlier in his career as a potential guy who could break out and be a scorer. It's just never happened, though, and I don't think it's going to happen, so I would just avoid him. Matheson, I've mentioned week after week, and he's continuing to be all right. He got a goal today. I think he's going to be a steady 30-point defenseman this year, so I think he gets up to, I think he's going to increase his pace. Right now he's on pace for more like probably 25 or even less. But I think he's going to get it going. I think that Florida are starting to use him better. And I think he's a talented young player who does have potential to be better than what he's been. There's not a lot else out there. I think that, another guy right there that I just noticed, Strawman, who has been one of the more added players in the league right now. 14%, but he's going up a lot real quickly here. He had a 3-point game yesterday, and he's been scoring a little bit before that. He also went on about a 10-game spree of no points. So I'm not sold. I've been looking at him all year because I love anybody on Tampa Bay. Pretty much you could name a player on Tampa Bay, and I'd love to have them right now. You look at Kucherov and Nesterov and all those guys. Anybody who's been overperforming this year in Tampa Bay are great to have. Strawman's not been overperforming. He's been about what he is. Which has kind of been surprising to me. He gets no power play time, and that's really killing him. So unless he gets some form of power play time, I don't think you need him on your team. In a deep league, sure, but he doesn't even provide the hits or blocks that would really give him some kind of value. So there's not a lot there. I don't think he's going to become a 30-point defenseman tonight or this season, I mean. So I would continue to avoid him, I think. And that's like really,